Buenas, everybody. Welcome to this special meeting. This meeting is called to order. It's now 2:05 p.m. It's Friday, July 29th, 2022. In compliance with Public Law 24-109, Guam Ancestral Lands Commission published the public meeting announcement for Friday, July 29th, 2022 in the Pacific Daily News on Wednesday, July 20, 2022, and Monday, July 27, 2022. Director, roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chairman Eclavea,
Present.
Vice Chairman Laguarnia. Thank you, Vice Chair. I see he raised his hands. Secretary Treasurer Cruz.
Here.
Commissioner Camacho. Mr. Chair, Commissioner Camacho informed me that she has a conflict with meetings. She'll be attending the Guam Housing Corporation meeting.
Noted.
Okay, Commissioner Rios. Mr. Chair, Commissioner Rios is attempting to log in. Hopefully he'll be logged in shortly.
Okay,
We'll
perfect.
get back to him. Commissioner Westling. I don't see Commissioner Westling online yet. Mr. Chair, I'll try to contact her and find out if she's available today. Commissioner Orlino. Commissioner Orlino, you're on mute.
Here, sorry.
Hey, thank you. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum. We have 4 commissioners present for operations.
The Jules Mosque Director. Okay, let's move down to item number 3, which is the Smith Bridge Lease Agreement, RFP 21-011. So we'll start first with our legal counsel concerns.
So yeah, if you saw the email that Director Birch sent out, most of the potential lease is pretty good. There were a couple clauses in there that I had some issues with. One of them was the indemnification clause. The AG's office has been strongly against any sort of indemnification by the government for a private party ever since the Port Authority had their instance with the YTK stuff a few years back. So I kind of talked about rewording that section to kind of remove the indemnifications, some of which on both sides, trying to even it out. The other thing I was a little wary of was the section regarding attorney's fees. They had recommended that in any sort of litigation that a prevailing party would win all its attorney's fees. The problem with that is we're a government agency. We're not a private party. You know, that's a little different when it's 2 private parties and one side's clearly wrong and then the other side gets to recover the attorney's fees. But because we're the government, we don't really have billings and attorney's fees. We just have an attorney that's on retainer for a salary, a set salary. So it's difficult to really ascertain attorney's fees in any sort of litigation. So I would recommend that we just default to what's called the American rule, which is the basic underlying rule in most litigation if there's no agreement, and that's that each side bear the cost of its own litigation.
Okay, those were just the basic 2 concerns you had.
Yeah, those are the 2 primary ones. And if we get into any other details and you need my input on any of them, feel free to ask.
Okay. No, thank you very much for those suggestions, and I can definitely see the situation with the legal fees, and that's going to save a lot of headaches for the commission. Do we have any issues with? I'm sorry, I see Commissioner Cruz. You have your hands up. You're on mute.
if our attorney doesn't have any other comments or concerns on this draft lease, I understand it's only a draft lease. I have a question. Who drafted this lease agreement? And usually before it comes to the commissioner, it's a final lease approval, not reviewed or done by the GITA, and of course with the input of our commissioners. But so it's just really kind of strange that a draft is being presented instead of being finalized. I'm not used to that, So if it's finalized and all parties involved or had a chance to review it, it's less kind of like, less than the, it kind of just, narrow down what we really need to get out of or maybe concerns, our concerns are addressed on that draft. So that's another, one of my comments. And the other thing is that, if you go through this lease, you can see, I have let me see. Some of that, it has a subtitle. Let me see. On concerns of the tenant, it ends. I'm kind of just reading this last minute. On one of the draft here, page 7, on payment of taxes by tenant, does Gunpowne pay taxes on these properties that we have? And if a property is leased out, does the tenants then start paying taxes during the duration of the lease agreement? And then I see on page 9 that there is a duplication noted by, highlighted in yellow. There's a whole bunch of notes here that on page 13, section 7.02, no liability of landlord. Can we change that to no liability to landlord instead of landlord? Then after that, instead of the landlord by receiving plans, can we also, whenever it's an agreement by either parties, can we put in like tenant agrees that the landlord by receiving the plans and specification has no liability? So some of the wordings can maybe I'm offering a suggestion. If it's a valid suggestion, it's a good concern. But some of this, like I said, instead of like page, just an example, page 14, section 7.05, alterations required by law. Any addition, alterations, instead of just any additions or alterations, before that, tenant agrees that any addition. So just to kind of like, cover this to me, hidden responsibility. So that's some of my comments, but I don't know if anybody else caught, because it's a lot of pages. So.
Okay, Commissioner, I think that's the reason why it's rightly called a draft. And it's the purpose of this meeting is for us to bring up like the concerns like what you just brought up so that we can come up with a finalized agreement. So rightly, this is called a draft because there's changes to be made. If there's changes to be made, and our legal counsel pointed out some of the concerns he had, and you've pointed out some of the concerns that you have. And so that's what this special meeting is about, to discuss those concerns and then make amendments to it. That's why basically it's still in draft stage.
I
And
do
they'll make
understand it's a draft. However, before it's presented to us, maybe kind of like, take a look at these, to me, it's not minor, to address it between our property manager and the,
Well, that's our property managers
and,
our property managers are the ones that have formalized the lease, Gita.
okay.
They're the ones that
Right.
drafted.
Well, yeah, I understand that. That's
Yeah.
why I'm just pointing it out that,
Yeah. No, but it's good because that's what this
Okay.
meeting is for us to look at those
And
specifications.
I did mention that normally things are kind of like final before it comes to the board for approval, because we still look at the final.
It cannot be final. It cannot be final. That's the purpose of this board, is
No.
it has to be in draft stage. And then when we make changes to it, then they finalize it. Then we look at it. And Commissioner Alaguan, you have your hands up? I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe we should yield to our partners, Mr. Mike Cruz, because, perhaps maybe he can comment, because maybe these are standard forms that that come within these, these agreements. So perhaps if Mr. Cruz can comment on that, and Mr. Calvo, if he's there. Well, I guess, Mike, if you would allow him, maybe, because it looks like those are standard clauses in the lease agreement. Am I correct, Mike?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, basically those are standard. We did utilize prior lease agreements to come up with the draft. It is still draft because we did not get Nick's review prior to it being sent to the commission members. We now have Nick's comments. And so, we'll incorporate those into a clean draft that, can be presented to the commission, if they approve the lease. Our recommendation today was going to be to approve the lease subject to final legal counsel review, so that we make sure that all of the commissioners' concerns were addressed and all of the legal concerns were addressed. So, that's why it's still draft, is because we just recently, the lease was sent out to you before legal counsel, Ancestral's legal counsel had a chance to review it.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'd like to welcome Commissioner Wesley and Commissioner Rios. They just tuned in.
Yes, noted. Welcome,
Okay,
Commissioner.
And I also recommend that we share the screen with Gita and allow Mr. Mike Cruz to go over the summary of the main terms of the contract and answer any questions that the commissioners may have on the contract.
Okay, but can we get Gita first to address our treasurer's?
Yes, but I
concerns?
feel that they should be able to share the screen so they could explain it in greater detail.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I think
Very good.
Mr. Cruz would be ready for that.
So our
Yeah.
Commissioner Cruz brought up some concerns. Maybe you can touch on those concerns.
As to the draft lease,
Well, you already explained that. So
Yeah.
basically her other points.
as far as, tenant agreement on a lot of these things, the lease would be signed by both parties in the end. So, I guess for clarity, if legal counsel believe that's necessary, we could include terms like tenant agrees that any additions or improvement, things that Commissioner Cruz raised. But like I said, it's based on prior lease agreements, and those lease agreements require that both parties sign off.
I've seen the other lease agreement. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Mhm.
And
I have
some
some
things
valid
like
points.
sometimes You know, that it says tenant agrees that, da, da, da.
I mean,
Landlord
that's,
agrees that, da, 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 on subtitles, yeah.
yeah, I mean, I defer to Nick, you know, if he,
Yeah, I mean, it's
I-
fine if we modify that language, and if it makes Commissioner Cruz feel better about the contract, I don't think it's anything that's going to be a major issue.
Yeah.
And I think it's a quick and easy change.
Yeah.
I don't see it being something that anyone else would have objections to. It's just a clarification of the term.
Yeah, I agree with our legal counsel that the language is already included if you read through the entire paragraph. For example, on the one given on page 14, section 7.05, it does not start off with the tenant, but it does end with it where the last part of that sentence says, or governmental regulations, or because of the use of which the premises are put by tenant shall be made and paid for by the tenant. So the word tenant is in there. It is. It's just that it's a matter of semantics. It's not at the beginning of the sentence. It's at the end of the statement. It's a matter of how you want to word it. We could reword it, but those issues are already covered.
Commissioner LeBlanc?
Yeah, I think we're at that juncture already, as what Mr. Cruz said, is that once it is reviewed by our legal, then it would come to a finalization, and then we move forward on it. Because you know the legality is, that's why our legal counsel is there. It's to ensure that both sides are in agreement and the liabilities will not jeopardize either side. You know, that's why it's being negotiated. But we're already at that juncture where our partners, Gita, is ready to move forward with this, and our legal is already agreed to add the amendments or whatever needed to take to protect the interests of the ancestral lands itself. So let's move forward.
Mr. Chair, what we were planning on presenting, I mean, I know that we gave a short presentation at the last meeting, but not all of the members were present. So we were kind of prepared to go over, you know, the RFP process and some of the major policy positions that were taken during the lease negotiations and the results of those, so that members that weren't present at the last meeting would be able to, you know, understand what was done. That's what we were prepared to do at this meeting. Again, you know, concluding with a recommendation that the lease be approved subject to final legal counsel review.
Our director is saying that maybe we should have you just run through the points of the, you know, share the screen and run through the points in it. But before we do that, commissioners, do you have any, I know you've studied the lease. Do you have any concerns you want to bring up though right now? Any concerns or any points you want to bring up, commissioners? Okay, Commissioner Wesley. After Commissioner Wesley, then Commissioner Rios, you'll come on.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the floor. Just a comment only because I've been scrolling through and I didn't find anything to this effect. Under Article 7, tenant improvements, as far as tenant making improvements, should we include in there, Mr. Toff, some kind of language to state that if the tenant is to make improvements to the property, whether minor or substantial, that they will obtain the necessary building permits and clearances and everything?
Yes, we can, I thought that might be in there, but if it's not, yes, we could add that in
Okay,
there.
I-
Let me,
It might be, I'm sorry, I was scrolling through the lease, but I couldn't find anything to that effect, so I was just
Section 7.04.
04, tenants' responsibilities. Okay, I'm sorry.
yeah, he's
All
correct.
renters-
Yep.
Alteration or shall procure and pay for all. Okay, thank you. Sorry for taking up your time. Thank you for pointing that
No,
out.
don't be sorry, because this is what this meeting is for, is I want the commissioners to go through this, to add in any provisions that they think are missing, or to question any provisions that they think are questionable, so that we can be in agreement moving forward on this.
Okay.
So don't hesitate to bring up issues, and we can, when, you know, if it's in the contract, great. If it's not, we can discuss whether to add it.
Okay.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Rios, you had your hands up. Commissioner Rios?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I just had one concern as well. I was looking at the lease and the draft, and there was a section in there about what was on the property and the process to mitigate that and to clean it up, and that we were going to reimburse the tenant on the expenses they had accrued to clean that property up. And I was just a little bit concerned about that, only because we've, on a private note, we've had to deal with, some concerns with properties that I've had an opportunity to kind of see how the operation went with regard to, like, maybe an apartment complex, if I'm not mistaken, and what the tenant wanted to do, in preparation to make it ready for occupancy, and how the control and the expenses of that particular project to clean it up, and how it was difficult to kind of, from a landlord's perspective, kind of see how money is being spent for that cleanup. Since we as the tenant are agreeing in the lease to reimburse those expenses over probably an offset of the rent. And so I'm just concerned that maybe that cleanup be something that might need to be contracted out by a private contractor, third party, so that there's no concerns between, us, the landlord, and the tenant about questioning how and the amount of money that's going to be used for that particular cleanup. And then at the end of the day, we are the ones paying for that. And so, there's rates, for things like that to be done. And I'm just concerned that, if you have a crane operator doing a cleanup job that just requires heavy labor, our rate for cleanup might be quite expensive. And so I'm just concerned that we be extra careful with the cleanup of that property, and how that money will be reimbursed and how it will be reimbursed. That's all. Thank you.
That's actually the biggest issue with my concern with that property, is the cleanup. And yes, you're right. And I wanted to make sure that Gita is prudent and using the best of their abilities to oversee the cleanup, because that's the biggest part of the issue of that property with us for years. And I have just one concern with that same subject you brought up. But if there's no other concerns from the board, I'd like for Gita to go ahead and present the finer points of the lease, and then we take it from there. Mike?
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Okay,
You
I'm
have
sorry.
another question?
Go ahead. Okay, Commissioner Cruz.
Question.
Go ahead, Commissioner Cruz. Go ahead.
Okay, on page 10, the last sentence, tenants' obligation and liabilities under this section shall continue so as long as landlord bears any liability or responsibility under environmental law for any action that occurs during the term of this lease. Is that correct? Landlord bears any liability and responsibility under environmental laws for any action that occurs on the premises during the term of this lease. So
And the section of that is 603 or 602? What?
that's I don't know, but it's in the last-
604J.
604? Okay.
right, the last-
604J. My reading of that, Commissioner Cruz, is with that basically that the tenant's obligations and liabilities are only for the term of the lease. Once the lease is done, they're no longer obliged to do any more permitting, any more liability for environmental issues. We can reword it if you would like it to be a little more plain on that point.
All right, thank you. Can you reword it so that landlords are not going to be responsible for any liabilities during the term of the lease? Okay, thank you. I'm looking for a page here where it says that the option to renew at the end of the lease. Shouldn't that be at least 90 days before the end of the lease so that we can start making plans if they're going to go ahead and renew, or we should be looking for another tenant? I didn't highlight the page on that, but I read it somewhere here.
I think
To the end of the
because,
lease to
yeah, we're limited with a 5-year lease. We're limited with 5 years. I think anything further than 5 years has to be RFP.
I
or
understand that, but it's saying the end of the lease, which is the 4-year lease.
The 5-year.
Okay, the 5-year lease. But my point is, right before right after the end of the lease, that's when we can negotiate renewing the lease. Typically, we do this 90 days before the end of the lease.
I don't think that's how it's going to work with this, because the legislature limited us to 5 years. I'm not sure. Gita, you wanna chime in on that?
The intent, I mean, our direction from the commission was a 5-year lease, recognizing that the legislature has its own requirements for longer term leases. The idea is that during the 5-year term, if the commission would like to do so, to work with the legislature to try and get a long-term lease for Smithbridge. But right now, the lease is just 5 years, as the chairman had indicated.
And we can also communicate with Smithbridge during that last year and see where they're at as far as if they're interested in a rebid, and kind of make our plans accordingly. We're not, operating completely in the dark.
They've already expressed their desire to have a longer term lease. Dan, do you want to comment on that? Dan Swavely, representing Smithbridge.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Dan Swavely here on behalf of Albert Smith, president of Smithbridge Guam, Inc. Absolutely, we've been on record since the beginning, looking forward to more than 5 years, but we understand the hurdles there. We can't do it alone, and we'd be willing to start that process, as Commissioner Cruz suggested, as early as possible, knowing the process it takes at the legislature to get anything approved. Ideally, we would like to see this 5 years roll right over to another lease period, right? So happy to do what Commissioner Cruz is suggesting.
Commissioner Westling, your hands up?
Yeah, under Article 3, Section 3.01, it states that a tenant's option and by no later than the end of the 4th year of this lease, the parties agree to negotiate a long-term lease and submit such long-term lease to the Guam legislature as necessary. So doesn't that already state that
Yeah, so it
if
is
there
in
is a
there.
desire to move forward, that by the end of the 4th year, that option has to be brought up and started working on? So that gives us like a whole year before the end of the 5th year. Is that correct? Does that state that? That's how I read that.
It does.
Yeah, even though it's stating it in the lease agreement, I think we're still limited with that 5 years. That's the question mark.
No, I know.
Uh,
It does state this is a 5-year term, but it does, I believe it states here, addressing Commissioner Cruz's concern, that if there is going to be any kind of discussion or desire to extend that, it's got to be made notice, or this says the tenant's option, it has to be made no later than the end of the 4th year of the lease.
Yeah, so thanks for pointing that out. It is in there in the lease agreement.
Right,
It
so
is.
that gives us basically 12 months, to work on.
Yes,
Something,
exactly. Now,
Right, so-
whether the other story is whether we can just roll it over and have the legislature approve us to just extend with Smithbridge. That's the question I have, or whether or not they're going to have to allow us to rebid it. So that's the question mark right there, whether we can just extend them and extend and extend and extend.
Yeah, well, I think Article 3 states that, if Smithbridge wants to continue, that they've got to give notice of their intention or desire to want to extend by the end of the 4th year. And if they don't do that, then we can, assume that that our agreement with them will expire, at the end of the 5th year, and we move on. At least that's how I read it.
Yes, that's how I look at it too.
Okay.
Legal counsel, you were about to comment?
Yeah, that's exactly why I read it too. So if we have a sponsor with the legislature that sees that we have the evaluations of the property properly done, we have the bidder who's willing to put in a long-term lease, it should go fairly smoothly. If not, then at the end of the 4-year period, we can start looking to prep a new 5-year bid out for the next contract length on it. So, we'll know well before the end of the lease what our plan is, I believe.
Just to remind the board, we're limited to 5-year leases. We can go longer, but we just basically have to get the legislature's approval for anything longer than 5 years. So when this ends, I'm not sure how it's going to work. If we can just extend it, that's my, I don't know about that, but I guess we'll tackle that when it gets to it, I guess, if Smithbridge wants to continue. Okay, so any more questions?
Yes,
Commissioner Rios?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, but we do have the authority to do another 5-year lease, right? So we could initiate another 5-year lease again. I think we can do that.
But we can do that, but we'd have to put it out to bid again. We can't just roll it over as an additional term on it.
All right.
It would be void.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So I guess you just answered my question.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you.
Even if they wanted to extend for a year, we can't just extend for a year and extend for a year. Let's say at the 4th year, they wanted to extend for another year.
Well, so the lease would be valid through the 5th year. And what's happened with some other agencies that I've worked with is that sometimes they'll have what's called a holdover tenancy, or sometimes just a right of entry with provisions as far as liabilities go, but it's not an actual full-on lease, and it definitely has fewer rights and protections conveyed than an actual lease. So they're kind of frowned upon, but it's really a stopgap sort of thing and not intended to be a long-term solution.
I see.
I have
So,
another question.
yeah, I see. So just to comment on that, what you're saying is that it can be, but it has to be for a specific intention as opposed to just continuing on with extensions on the lease is what you're saying.
Yeah,
Can it just
any
be-
of those 30, like they would be cut into 30-day sections of
Oh, I
holdover
see.
tenancy.
Yeah, got
And
it.
that a lot of the provisions in the lease would not be applicable to
Okay.
that. So
Okay, very
So-
good. That clears it. Commissioner Cruz, go ahead.
Okay,
Commissioner Cruz.
and this is again, relates in, relationship to the end of the lease. Now, on page 3, section 4.02, rent escalation, the base rent shall escalate 5% on the first of the 4th anniversary of the lease. That, I guess there's no rent escalation because the lease is gonna expire, and if we renew it, I'm thinking that we can look at another, survey, fair market value determination then before the expiration of the lease. It could be more valuable then.
I'm going to guess that if it goes to a long-term lease, the legislature would likely require another appraisal at the time. And if we do another, if the legislature doesn't go for it and we have to RFP it out again, then we would probably do another appraisal at that time regardless anyway.
I see. So this section then will not be applicable, rent escalation.
It would work for the years 4 and 5 of this current contract. And any holdover tenancy would probably be subject to that provision as well. But I'm guessing if we went with a long-term contract, we would rework the entire rent escalation issue.
All right, thank you.
And just to add to that real quick, I understand that the way I read the lease is that Smithbridge is in lieu of the participation rent, they've raised the rental. So I'm not sure how that affects on the 4-year because it's actually higher than our appraisal right now. So I if we try to do another appraisal at that time when they're actually paying a higher base rent, considering that it's in lieu of the participation rent. So just wanted to bring that up. So Kathy, you had your hands up? Oh, no, okay. Vice Chair, you had your hands up. Oh, you're on mute.
I just wanted to wave back to Kathy.
I have a question. On
Okay, go ahead.
Smithbridge, is there, there's a business license on this area where, and the type of business license you have for, doing business in this area? Do you have, does that include an environmental clearance when you obtain that business license? Because of our biggest concern is that it's adjacent properties are contaminated. And if that concern is not addressed now, we may be forced to immediately address that issue. And then we would need to, get estimated costs for that cleanup, although we could, negotiate to defer it, or rather to deduct it from your rent. So
Commissioner
that's my
Cruz,
next
Commissioner
question.
Cruz, Commissioner Cruz, I think your question should be directed more towards Gita, maybe our legal counsel.
Okay. Go ahead, then.
Because basically the adjacent property is part of the lease. So the properties you're talking about it's not really adjacent, it's part of the lot. It's part of the lease.
Yeah, but I
So-
don't think it's usable right now, and I don't think the
Yeah, it's
tenants
not,
will-
it's not, well, yes, it's not, and about 5 acres has been identified, but that's part of the lease agreement we have for the cleanup. This is our one of our methods of RFPing it and then working out a solution that cleans it up. That's what we're looking for right now. That's one of the main aspects of this RFP that I was concerned with. So that really should probably be maybe for both, but really towards Gita, because that's how we fashioned the negotiations for it. Mike, you want to comment real quick?
No, you're correct, Mr. Chairman. We can show you the map. There are 3 lots in that area. Smithbridge intends to utilize the clean lot and clean up the remaining 2. So they are actually separate lots, but all part of the same lease.
Part of the same lease, yeah. So they're all included in the lease. It's just that 5 acres off the lease is not usable at this time. As they start cleaning up, then it becomes
Then
part of the
they
lease.
become
Then
usable, yeah.
it becomes usable, then they start.
Well, they're part of the lease. Once they become usable, Smithbridge pays rent on the additional usable area.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Director.
Yes, that's why I recommended that we allow Mr. Mike Cruz to go through the presentation of the main terms of the lease, so these things could be clarified. If we have any problems or if the commissioners have any issues with the lease, then we can go back and modify it or correct it to their pleasure. So if we allow Mr. Cruz to do what we had planned, I think it'll make it a lot clearer to the rest of the commissioners
Okay.
about what the lease package is all about.
Yeah, very good. I was just assuming that the board members had a chance to already go through the stipulations of the lease and we could get right to the questioning, but yes, of course. Gita, please continue. Let's start up with the finer points and the stipulations of the lease.
Micah, you need to share your screen, or is it Mary that needs to
Mary.
share her screen?
Mary.
Joey, can you make
Mary
Mary a
Camacho
co-host?
from Gita will share.
Yes, so make Mary Camacho from Gita a co-host so she can share the screen. Joey? Okay, Mike, it's all yours.
So this is basically Smithbridge's proposal. Can you hear me, commissioners?
Yes.
There are actually 3 lots, and they are circled on that map. It's labeled F12-1, -2, and -3. The larger shaded area outside of those 3 is the Matson property, and the smaller shaded area inside those 3 is the Transsteel license. So all around the Transsteel license, you have the 13 acres that Smithbridge is leasing. They initially intend to utilize the clean area, which is basically the area in blue and purple.
Green.
And the unusable area right now is basically the red, which used to be Bali Steel under F12-1 and Brand Inc. F12-2. The green area portions of both of all 3 lots we've found that there might a survey map that was prepared earlier identified some contamination, not contamination, but tires, scrap metal, container, 40-foot container located on that property. So we intend to take a look at that and see whether that can be cleaned immediately so that Smithbridge can utilize that property. But essentially, Mary, if you can show that, if you can see it, it's kind of real small print, but there's metal, there's tires in the area that in the prior map was shaded green. That green area is to be utilized, is proposed for utilization by Pacific Unlimited, where they would, park their trailers and perform their operations. So the blue area is where the concrete batch plant would be. The purple area would be for the warehouse. And well, the red area, once it's cleaned, will be utilized by Smithbridge. So as each acre becomes cleaned, the rent will include, those areas. So right now, the rough estimate is about 7 or 8 acres of clean property, 4 to 5 acres or 5 to 6 acres of somewhat contaminated property, depending upon, what is in that green area. Base rent based on the clean areas, assumed at 8 acres would be $8,800 a month. And then as each acre becomes clean, another $1,100 would be added to that. And then, as Commissioner Cruz noted, in the 4th year of the lease, the rents would escalate by 5%. So
Mike, can you quickly just show again real quick where the sublease area is?
The green.
Okay.
That is the area proposed by Smithbridge for use by its subtenant, Pacific Unlimited. They will pay the same rent that Smithbridge is paying. If the lease agreement specifies that if, and you'll see that on page 23, if Smithbridge subleases an area to a tenant at a rate that's higher than what they pay us, they pay on the commission, then the commission would get 50% of the difference between the rent that's paid and the base rent, to ensure that the commission obtains some funding if negotiations prove that rents are to be higher. So the green area is approximately 3 acres, which would be sublet to Pacific Unlimited.
Okay, Mike, very good. Continue.
So the idea is that, or what's contained in the lease agreement is that as these, Smith, once the lease is signed, Smithbridge will commission a cleanup plan which will address the requirements to clean up the properties, the cost of cleanup, and that draft of the plan will be submitted for approval by the commission. The commission has to approve it. And in the process of approving it, the commission can decide which areas it wants cleaned, how much of the rent will go toward the cleanup, and the schedule for cleanup. So it's really the commission's decision. The commission could decide none of it would be cleaned up. That's within the purview of the commission. And that's included in the lease agreement on page 4. So once the cleanup plan is prepared and approved by the commission, then the commission, will decide what will be done with the property. And whatever they decide to do, the cleanup, the cost of the plan, preparing the plan, and the cost of cleanup will be paid for using the rents. But Smithbridge will cover its own administrative costs to manage the preparation of the plan and manage the cleanup itself. So what the commission will be paying for is the actual plan preparation and the cleanup. Now, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but earlier there was an estimate of roughly $50,000 to prepare the cleanup plan, based on Smithbridge's experience with these things. So, at $50,000, assuming that that's in the ballpark to prepare a plan, it would take about 6 months of rent to pay off that $50,000. The cleanup cost has not been estimated at this point in time because exactly what's out there is not entirely known at this point. But there will be an environmental expert that will take a look at that and determine what needs to be done, what the cost is, and then all of that will be presented to the commission for their approval. Dan, did I miss anything? Or?
Thank you. I could elaborate just real quickly that there are 2 phases here, neither of which will proceed without commission approval. The first phase is we will solicit proposals from qualified hazardous waste mitigation companies to do a plan and a budget for cleaning it up. That's going to be the first product that we would get. We would collect those proposals, we'll make a recommendation on them, but we could not proceed with that phase 1 plan and budget until the commission approves it, because it would be that exact cost that the commission then would pay for. Smithbridge will pay for soliciting the proposals, managing the fee, Then as that is ongoing, Smithbridge will pay the money as it becomes due to that company and just then take it from rent. So clearly it's not going to be a 5-month or 6-month period to do the mitigation plan and budget. That's probably 2 or 3 months. So we would bankroll it in the interim. And then that budget then will tell us what needs to be done, how much it'll cost, and how it could be broken down into different phases. Again, before any of those are proceeded, the commission would have to approve that, because that would be a cost then that would be deducted from the rent. And then phase 2, similarly to phase 1, Smithbridge will take care of the management of the contract, solicitation of the bids, and bankrolling the costs as they come through in advance of the rent deductions.
So are there any questions from the commissioners?
Okay, regarding
I
that,
think you can
Regarding
probably take
that-
it off the screen now, right?
okay,
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
you don't need the map anymore, right?
no. Unless the board members do. But okay, regarding that, the commission has the option of receiving the rental payments and making the payments to the cleanup company based upon the work that Smith Bridge has done to procure the assessment and the company, correct?
Correct. You have the option to pay direct rather than have Smith Bridge bankroll it.
Okay, very good. My only concern is the time frame. I don't see a mandatory time frame regarding that. It just says the amount of time. It doesn't say by what time that the mitigation will, the plan. You said most likely between up to 3 months. And Gita says maybe 6 months, but you're saying it could be up to 3 months.
I wasn't saying 6 months. I was just using the rent payment and 50,000, and that would be paid off in 6
I
months.
see. Okay.
According to their proposal, Smith Bridge will begin the preparation of the cleanup plan immediately upon the signing of the lease. So once the lease is signed, they'll start commissioning or soliciting the proposals from hazardous waste.
Is that in the lease agreement? The time frame,
I don't think so.
is that in there?
I don't believe so. It's in their proposal, which is attached to the,
I just
which
like
will
to
be
see,
attached to the.
I like to see a confirmed timeline.
Sure.
I like to see that, you know,
Yeah,
the stages. There's a time.
Yeah, we can add that to.
Yeah, there's you know, there's marker points that we can look at that, okay, we should be at this stage. I mean, I can definitely see the the amount of time, but I like to see when it commences. I like to see a definite start point. And
Yeah,
then, and from
I think we can add the under section 404
404,
B, page 4 of the lease.
page 4.
Section B, I mean section C. Yeah, page 4. I think we can add in there that as soon as the lease is, right, Dan?
Correct.
As soon as the lease is approved, they will, tenant will begin work on the plan.
Correct. That's our full intent anyway.
Yeah.
No problem.
So we can add the timeline there, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, and then, so would that also, how would that entail the timeline regarding to commencement of the cleanup? I mean, you could have the mitigation plan in place in 3 months, but would that entail also the procurement of the hazardous company?
Only for purposes of the mitigation plan and budget, not operationally for the cleanup itself. After the mitigation and plan and budget is finished, then we'll know what kind of numbers we're talking about and timelines we're talking about. And that's what I'll bring back to the commission for your approval as to go, yes, we'll take care of this spot. We're not going to take care of those spots because they're 10 times more expensive, than the other two. And we can figure out how we get the best bang for the buck here.
Okay, so the timeline would be what, 3 months, 4 months that you have that mitigation plan in place for the board?
Well, I work with these companies now, and I can tell you, as a matter of fact, I've already talked with 2 of them that an RFP is coming, okay? They're happy to do the work, but I must tell you that they are so busy, particularly with military work right now, and we only have a couple, frankly, that I trust right now on Guam to do this work. So we're going to use our best powers of persuasion to get them to give us their attention as soon as possible. But at this point, I cannot give you a timeline on when they are going to come back, right? And besides, before they begin, I have to come back to you with saying, here's what it's going to cost, and here's how long it takes, you know, so you're going to have that interim step.
Okay, so what you're saying is the mitigation plan you will have in a timely manner.
For
But
sure.
as far as the commencement of starting the cleanup, we have no idea.
Not yet. Not yet. It's in our best interest, of course, to move it along in a timely fashion as possible, because frankly, we need more property down there. I mean, we're starting off in the hole from our needs. 8 acres is not enough. So we're starting off in the hole. So for sure, we're going to push that as quickly as we can.
Okay, Gita, you have any take on that?
No, Mr. Chairman.
This is my only concern, is basically the commencement of that cleanup and the timelines. So right now, the mitigation, we can have
what we can commit to at this point is that they'll begin the plan, you know, developing the plan as soon as the lease is prepared. But when that plan is completed and when the actual cleanup starts, I mean, that's in part under, I mean, needs Ancestral Lands Commission approval.
Yeah,
but we can't say when that would happen.
That's my main impetus for this RFP, basically.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
It's my main impetus for this RFP. Commissioner Wessling.
Yeah, if I may add, Chairman, is since we are at this point, and even if the lease is approved and signed, where the unknown factors are the time is the time, just as Mr. Swavely pointed out. But to address your concern as to, you know, how soon will things start once the commission approves of the plan and the cost, you know, I guess language could be added in there that within, you know, commission's approval of the plan and the budget, that work will commence, you know, within 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, or something like that, you know. That could be added in there.
Can you clarify again the last part you just said?
No, I was saying, because you were, you know, asking the time frame, you know, when can things begin? And right now it's all subject to the board, the commission approving a mitigation plan and the cost of cleanup. And but in the lease, it could be added something to the effect that once the commission has approved of the proposed mitigation plan and cleanup and cost, that cleanup will begin within, you know, 30 days or 60 days or 90 days of commission's approval. So that kind of, you know, brings in a time frame, but, you know, it doesn't state actual dates, you know, because we don't know. We don't know at this point.
You're right. See, the unknown factors that I'm just concerned with is, and I guess it's basically actually out of Smithbridge hands too, is that we don't know when those companies are going to be, they're going to build up going on. I think that they'll have the mitigation plan and the cost in place in a timely manner. Gita said they'll put it in the on that section.
Correct.
When they could actually start cleanup, that's the only thing. We could put 60, 90 days, but if the companies are not available, I mean, they agreed for a price, but if they're swamped to work, we're basically, that's just basically my only concern is that when is the cleanup going to start? But I guess it's out of Smithbridge hands the way it looks right now. They'll get the mitigation plan to us, the cost, and even if we approve it and we decide to pay it ourselves through the rent, and there's nobody, they can't start. That's just my concern. They might not be able to start in 4 years or 5 years. The whole contract could be up by the time they're able to start. That's just my concern, you know?
Sure. And that's
Yeah.
always the possibility, but I
Yeah.
guess we'll cross that bridge as we get to it, but I'm sure language can be added in there to kind of, corral in a time frame rather than to leave it very, very open-ended.
Yeah, and Smithbridge is saying it's to their best interest to get it cleaned up because they want more land. But then again, they could just sit on it. I'm just being honest, But yes, yeah, Dan, yeah, I'm sure you need the land. It's just that we're it's not something we could just put in the language of the into the lease agreement. Okay, Dan?
Please. For sure. I'm happy with language that says as soon as or within 30 days of the commission approving the budget and plan, we will start the process of finding a qualified subcontractor to do the cleanup. For sure, that's fine. What I am seeing here is the likelihood that there could be some specialized equipment required to take care of some of those nasties that are on that contaminated site, and that equipment just may not be available in a timely fashion. So for sure, we can get it going right away. Happy with that language, similar to phase one. Within 30 days of you approving budget, we will start the solicitation process, and we'll just do the best we can, and we'll work together. We'll make a report every monthly meeting where we are, and maybe there's some shortcuts we can take,
Awesome.
as a team, and achieve your. For sure, I totally understand your goal here. Yeah.
Yeah.
We share.
And I think there's areas that are like what Gita pointed out, that less of an issue, like with the tires, in some areas that are probably quicker to attend to, and the other issues can be, so I'm concerned with that, but I think we can go ahead and move with stuff that's not going to take too much specialized equipment on, I think,
Okay.
Commissioner Rios, you got your hands up?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just thinking a couple of things, and Dan, I appreciate Dan, very, very clear, clarifying a bunch of items. There was a couple, there's just one other, or maybe one or two things that I'm not very clear on, and it's that mitigation plan in itself. Just, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, the mitigation plan, would that not come from the vendor that you are soliciting the cleanup, or is that mitigation plan something that Smithbridge would put in place, and these would be the requirements for the cleanup? And there I can see, I'm trying to figure out how a mitigation plan would be $50,000, and in your guesstimates or estimates on that amount, I mean, I can only imagine what the cleanup will be, and if that's going to be really in the best interest for the commission to even consider the 4 or 5 acres for cleanup, if we're already in debt up to 50,000 for the mitigation plan. I'm thinking that when I approach a piece of property that needs to be cleaned up, that it's actual, I know you're going to have to pay somebody to come out and do an estimate of what's on the property, but do all 3 contractors do those estimates and charge for those estimates? And then I've seen something like that in the past where we've had equipment looked at or a piece of property looked at, and we still have to pay for those hours that someone comes out to assess it. And then once that contractor is awarded the cleanup, then normally that assessment cost gets credited toward the project. That's kind of the things I've been seeing, and I've seen work in the past. I just don't understand the mitigation plan, if that's something that Dan Smithbridge will put together for us to see first. And are we saying at this point that we are going to approve a mitigation plan to be done and to be credited toward the rent? And are we also saying that 50,000 is the amount that we are approving today towards a mitigation plan? And then, so that's just my concern on that. I'm just I just want to be careful with how those offsets are going to happen, because I didn't see that in the lease. I did see that it will need to be approved by the board, but I didn't see that there would be a request for cleanup proposals by three known companies that can actually do this type of work and dispose of these type of things properly. Because that's also our concern, that we don't want somebody in there who's going to take all the tires, and then we don't know where those tires are at, and now those tires become someone else's problem, and that we don't want. And so that's all, Dan. I appreciate everything that you're doing with us and being as clear as possible. And we like that. We want to be as transparent about this thing and be very comfortable moving forward, so that when those times come for renewal and things like that, that we want to be here to support you, know that what the kind of business that we've been doing is good business, and we want to continue good business. Thank you.
Very good, Commissioner Rios. I just want you to know that, well, just the board, that I made it very clear with Gita regarding our intention, and all of those points you brought up, it is factored in to when we decided to put out this RFP. So Gita actually is going to be very active in that aspect of the points that you brought up with regard to the mitigation process and those companies. So, you know, it's basically up to the board. The board is the one that's going to have to approve it when it comes in. So that's that was outlined earlier. But your concerns are very much my concerns in the beginning. So I'm pretty confident in what Gita has put out so far, and the rating team and their negotiations. There was just a couple of things I was concerned with, was the timelines, and then of course our legal counsel's concerned with a couple of those stipulations, and of course also with Commissioner Cruz, our treasurer. So very good. I'm pretty comfortable with it, given those changes that are going to be made, and then with the limitations of how we're going to move. But are we done, Mike? You have any other points you want to bring up? Or are you done?
Well, I think there were some questions from Commissioner Rios. Dan, were you going to respond to those? Or?
Yes, thank you. Yes, Commissioner, copy that. The reason I bifurcated the mitigation plan and the actual cleanup is because there's a strong likelihood those will be two different companies. Because we have some companies that just do the assessment and the planning, and we have other companies that just take away everything. And well, I just tore down those two buildings for a jack to be landfilled. So two different companies are there. That's why I bifurcated it, because I wasn't sure I could have them do the plan and then roll that cost into the cleanup. Could be two different people I'm dealing with, right? And yeah, so that's why there's two different companies, at least two, possibly two different companies involved. And also because, you know, we already know what's there, because in 2009, you all had an assessment done by ARC Environmental. They did the assessment. So we already know what's there, but we don't know what to do with it and what it'll cost. That's why we have that first step, mitigation plan and budget, right? And then from there, I really believe at the end of the day, you're going to look at that same map that I drew the red line around there, and we're going to see dollars for this acre, that acre, this for cleanup, right? And I really believe you're going to say that, whoa, those 2 acres are going to cost $100,000 just to clean them up. Forget it. Let's take these other acres that we can get, as I said, more bang for the buck from. So I think you're going to like the way this thing unfolds and your continuous involvement with both the planning and the success of it.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it.
Sure.
So, by the way, Dan, are you going to be basically involved with the reports, the monthly reports given to?
I will be doing on behalf of Smithbridge. I will be managing the process to bring in the companies and then managing their work, monitoring it, and yeah, being in the field with them. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, Director
Mis-
Birch?
Yes, Mr. Chair. No,
Okay,
I don't have any questions. I was part of the negotiating team as well as Vice Chair Laguarnia. So we're very much aware about what we included in the lease agreement. And that's why I agree that we should include the changes that our legal counsel advised us to include. And then, of course, all the other changes that the commissioners now had agreed to. We can place all of that in as soon as possible.
Okay,
Now, I don't know if the commissioners would agree to, like what Mike Cruz recommended was to agree on to vote on the proposed draft here, pending legal's approval.
legal counsel, can you weigh in it? But before you do, Mike, did you have your hands up for a minute there?
No, I was going to say basically the same thing that John was saying.
Oh,
That
okay,
our
okay,
recommendation.
got it. Okay, legal counsel?
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
Okay, he agrees with, I'm sorry. Okay, Dan, you had your hands up.
Thank you. Just for the record, Smithbridge consents to the changes that Nick has suggested. I understand the background for him, and I don't have a problem, nor will we have a problem with anything else that was suggested during the course of this hearing.
Very good. Okay, so there's no objections from our legal counsel if we want to make a vote on the draft, notwithstanding the new stipulations.
Vice Chair Laguarnia had his hands up, Mr.
Yeah.
Chair.
Where's he at?
Yeah.
Okay, oh, there he is.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This is just Marcy. I just wanted to comment that, the negotiation team members and with Dan and had been going over this back and forth. This has already been going on a couple months already, right, Mr. Director? And they've been hacking away at it, and I've been filled in on the matters at times, if ever I can get in, but all those matters that you discussed, yes, they were all included. So I just would, consider that we move forward on this. That's all I have to say.
Okay, we have a recommendation from our property manager, Gita, and also from our director and the negotiating team to approve. Our legal counsel is also affirmative. So let's take action.
So, Mr. Chair, I believe you're asking the commissioners to make a motion and second.
Okay, Louisa, you have your hands up? Commissioner
Yes.
Rios.
Yes,
West.
thank you. I'm sorry, just one last question. I was just scrolling through the lease again. In section 5.02 on page 7, where it says payment of taxes by tenant, I'm assuming we're talking about real property taxes. So during the term of the lease, the tenant is going to be responsible for paying the property taxes? Is that correct?
I think maybe Nick, it's kind of a standard provision in there, but this is government property, so we don't think that there are any taxes, property taxes at least, that would be levied on this property.
Joey, can you chime in on this, Joey?
But in the event that there are property taxes levied, will the tenant be paying the property taxes during the term of the lease? Because this section doesn't say it. It's titled payment of taxes by tenant, but it just says that basically the landlord will pay any prior delinquencies or oh no, it says landlord will pay prior to delinquency all real property taxes levied or assessed upon the premises during the term of the lease.
I know if CLTC RFPs.
Does that mean that the landlord will pay for property taxes, both delinquent?
Yeah, I mean, originally the provision was tenant would, not landlord. But
Right.
Smithbridge said, I mean, there's no taxes levied on this property, so.
Okay, well.
Right, I mean, this is government property,
Right,
right?
that's a good point she brought up into, because basically even in CLTC properties, the tenant pays for the.
Well,
tax.
there's a law that requires that. I mean, this is a point that Commissioner Cruz raised earlier about property taxes.
Okay.
But it was just our understanding that this is government of Guam property that would not be that is not taxed. We've never gotten a tax bill.
Joey, can you chime in on that? Because even CLTC's properties, the tenants are responsible for those commercial leases.
Right.
Taxes.
That's by law. They passed a law but there's no law for ancestral properties. Joey maybe knows.
I agree with Mike. Yeah, the chairman is right that small land trusts lessees are paying taxes, but then Mike's also right that it's by law that they pay the taxes. So Matson is not paying taxes, although that
I cannot hear.
Joey, you're muffled.
So they're they have the same
Oh, okay. I mean,
in their lease. So yeah, I can find that out if anything.
okay. Yeah, essentially, I was just bringing up the point that this section is titled "Payment of Taxes by Tenant." Yet, in the context of the paragraph, it really doesn't state that tenant is responsible for payment of real property taxes during the term of the lease. And
we can make that alteration.
Okay, that's fine. Great.
Yeah, and like Joey was saying that we don't pay taxes on ancestral lands. CLTC it is a statutory requirement for individual tenants to pay. But yeah, we'll make the language change just in case, so that the commission's comfortable with it.
Or do we just drop it, Nick?
Well, what's the language? What's the language you're going to change it to?
I really think that if, let's say, during the term of the lease, in the course of the lease, for whatever reason, a new law comes in that we're going to be charged property taxes, that what is customary with leases, that the tenant pays for that. So there should be language in there to cover that.
Yeah, what we could do is, go ahead.
No, okay, because I mean, it already states here, although, everyone's saying we've never had to pay taxes, it states in here that anything pre-existing to the lease and any delinquencies pre-existing to the lease, the tenant's not liable for that.
Correct, and we'll keep that part in there and just add in a sentence that makes it clear that the tenant would pay any taxes incurred during the term of the lease.
Okay, thank you.
Should they apply?
Correct. Yep.
But as of now, we know they don't. But I'm in agreement of changing the language on it.
Okay, Dan, would there be a problem with that?
Well, it's an unknown expense from our end, right? I mean, even if you assess it as, let's just say, typical semi-industrial property, let's just say assess it as an M1 or even as an M2. I mean, there's a cost there. Could be thousands of dollars there. We could be talking about 13 acres here. Could be thousands of dollars. It could approach months and months of rent. So it's a little scary, actually. And then if it takes a piece of legislation to actually assess ALC property tax, who's to say that it's going to be assessed according to the typical revenue and taxation assessment procedures? They might add their own assessment. They might say, yeah, whatever the revenue and taxation says plus 50%, because after all, it is of people's property, you know, that sort of thing. So it's a little scary. I mean, if you can defer that.
Well, if there's any taxes that's to be paid on it because of the development, the board shouldn't be responsible for paying those taxes for the development.
Well, but it is the development that creates the value in the property that drives the rent. See, I mean, if we're going to lease it and keep it fallow, you know, there's no value there. So then it's worth $100 a month.
Well, we know that it is a law in the CLTC right now. There's nothing in our enabling legislation, but if somehow, some way, they say CLTC, I mean, ancestral lands is going to owe taxes.
Yeah.
On government property that we own.
I think we all have to agree that'll never happen. On the other hand, you know senators and I know senators, and when a senator sees that there is a provision in here that Smithbridge could be nicked for taxes if it only takes a law to make it happen. I mean, to me, that's a low-hanging fruit for some senator, and we're going to have a bill put in there and say, well, why don't we charge taxes? Because the government's not going to pay for it. The tenant's going to pay for it. Right there it is in the Smithbridge lease.
Well, how would the board, you know?
But Mr. Chairman, there is a difference though between real property taxes on land and real property taxes on the buildings.
Yeah.
So
really two different. It's
yeah,
different.
I mean, on the land, there are no taxes because it's government land. But say a warehouse that is built by Smithbridge would be taxable, right? From a real property tax standpoint.
CLTC, it's not the land. It's
no, CLTC land. Is the land.
CLTC is the land by statute. Yeah,
and that's government property, right?
It is, but
even the Gita leases.
It's a 99-year lease to a tenant.
The Gita leases.
What about the commercial lease?
As far as I know, the commercial leases are not taxed. The land is not taxed.
Well, that answers that. So basically, if there's any tax is going to be assessed, it'll be on the development, the buildings.
Because it's not government owned.
But as of now, we know there's no taxes levied. But if it comes in, will the board be sacrificing its fiduciary duty to the trust by claiming we will be responsible for that?
What we could do is do a provision saying that any tax on the land would be the Ancestral Land Commission's liability. Any taxation on buildings would be the tenants.
Okay. Are you okay with that, Dan?
I'm okay with that. If we can also add that that assessment, any assessment on the value of the improvements would be assessed at the same rate as the government of Guam assesses private land for improvements. You know, that the authority for you to assess that suddenly does not have a different metric to it. It's the same way revenue taxation that assesses all M2 or M1 improvements.
Is there a precedence for something like that might have happened that you're concerned about that? I mean, I'm just curious.
No, I know I'm concerned about it because some senator is going to say, "Oh, look, we got a honeypot there." You know, you know, we got a deep pocket. Let's get them. They already got a concrete batch plant there, a cement warehouse, another warehouse. They're in business. They make millions of dollars a year.
So in essence, if it's not following what you're saying, then the board is going to be responsible.
No, I'm saying that. Okay, I would. Okay, I'm sorry that implied. I didn't mean to. We should be responsible for any taxes that are assessed on our improvements, if in fact it ever happens. Okay, absolutely, our problem. I'm just asking that I want that assessment to be the same as the government assesses improvements on any industrial property.
But of course, that's outside.
You get a
that's
special
outside the purview
assessment
of
rate.
ancestral lands, right? That's outside of our power. I mean,
Well, we
if
can,
they came into
so,
you
so
and-
our power to ensure that is limited, but you know, it would be the government stealing from itself and stealing from ancestral landowners, which I doubt they're going to be as eager to do.
I agree.
You know, there would be an incredible amount of opposition to that.
Okay, so how are we gonna language it? How are we gonna language
Dan
it?
and I can work on, and Gita can work on that exact language to make sure it fits the criteria of GALC and Smithbridge and Gita.
I'd like to thank Commissioner Cruz and Commissioner Wessling for bringing up those stipulations. Okay, so we're good to go?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Rios had his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mr. Rios.
Sorry, I hope I don't sound like a broken record, but Dan, thank you very much again for all those clarifications. But I'm trying to think that I mean, it should be treated as any other property. I mean, if Smithbridge was renting from a private owner, and you'd have to pay, you'd be obligated as well to pay the taxes if there were taxes on those properties, and if the revenue and taxation decided to appraise that property the following year just after you've made improvements to the property, I think you'd still be obligated to pay those taxes if the lease said such. I don't understand how we would attempt to make it any different than how the government is already imposing those fees already on the land and on the structure. And I think Mr. Chair is right. That's not our department. If something was to happen, then and taxes were going to be imposed on those properties. I don't think it should be Guam ancestral lands responsibility to pay those taxes. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out. I don't think they'd be. I mean, to be fair, I don't think they use a different denomination or factor. Otherwise, if it was something with regard to taxes and changing tax factors on companies based on how well they do, they'd be going after lots of companies that are doing relatively well and trying to figure out how to change the tax structure. I just think I'm trying to think how fair it could be, but I mean, if it was to happen, I mean, it would be in the best interest that it not happen, because of course there wouldn't be any additional fees that you'd be paying for the property. But I'm just trying to, I'm not understanding that point of it there being a different factor based on the fact that you're a tenant of Guam Ancestral Lands Commission. I don't think that the government would do such, I mean, or a senator will. I mean, that would just be unfair across the board to do something like that. It's just my thoughts.
Thank you. May I respond real quickly?
Sure.
For sure, Commissioner Rios, as I mentioned, we will always pay our fair share of this. I would not want anything to be deferred over to the commission. And I have negotiated leases both ways, frankly, where the landlord pays the taxes or where the tenant pays the taxes. But when the tenant pays the taxes, what I do in particular is I figure out what's going to be there, what it's going to cost, and then find facsimiles from other properties and find out what they're paying for taxes, so I know what kind of taxes I have to pay above and beyond my rent. Okay, that's how we do it. I didn't do that in this case because the tax issue never came up before. So I don't know what a concrete batch plant and a warehouse and a cement storage and a laydown yard would be assessed at. I could figure that out. I have not, because it hasn't come up before. I'm just saying that if it comes up, I'm happy with language that says it's our responsibility for improvements, not the commission. And if you feel uncomfortable with putting in some safeguard that, and of course that assessment should be the same as is ongoing now for every other private property. If that makes you uncomfortable, I think we can live with that, because I trust your judgment that who's gonna give us a special set of rules, right, that are more injurious than they give anyone else. I mean, I could just as easily say somebody in the legislature, but I'm not going to say that, because I see where you're coming from. I think we can live with that.
Okay, so,
Sorry about that. I apologize for that. I just wanted to make sure that, we just have an open mind, clear mind about what we're trying to do. We don't, we're not trying to make this difficult, nor are we trying to push the responsibilities to someone else that, should not be responsible for it. We just want to make sure we're covering our ends. Thank you.
Thank you too.
okay, so just Masi, Commissioner Rios. So basically, Gita and legal counsel, you're gonna put in the necessary language that we've discussed regarding that, right?
Yeah, as if
Okay.
the board votes to move this forward, yeah.
Okay. So if no further questions, let's move. Commissioner Orlino.
Well, after the finalization of the lease agreement, after it's executed, before we will see the final, right? So we'll go over it and we'll make sure that what we discussed today, like regarding the payment of taxes by tenant and all those, we'll see the final one, right?
So legal counsel, we're making a motion for this lease agreement, the draft, based upon the changes that we've discussed. Is that how this is going to work with this?
Correct. Yes. Motion subject to the changes discussed during this meeting.
Okay.
And then, yeah, we'll email the revised copy to the board before the chair signs it. So
we'll get to see it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, and we're good with that. We're good with that. Legally, we can make that motion contingent. Yes. Okay. Shall we move?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we need a motion on the floor.
Okay, I would, Mr. Chair, I move to approve the draft with all the changes that were discussed, and approval of upon the approval, the review of the legal counsel for the Smith Bridge lease.
Okay, motion on the floor to approve the RFP for
second that.
Okay, it's seconded by Commissioner Rios. Let's go on an individual vote. Commissioner Laguardia.
I approve.
Commissioner Rios.
I approve.
Commissioner Wesley.
I approve.
Okay, Commissioner Orlino.
I approve.
Commissioner Cruz.
Approve.
Okay, and I approve. Motion passes unanimously. Congratulations.
Thank you all.
Dan.
Thank you all.
So just
Congratulations. Congratulations for now.
And Gita, so just
As they say,
Mr. Chairman.
as they say, buckle up, baby. Here it comes.
And Director Sejus Masi, to you and the staff, and Kathy, our prayers for John.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And for Andy, Commissioner Laguardia.
Yes, Commissioner Laguardia. Vice.
And Ally.
Yes, and again, condolences, Vice Chair. You had
Thank you.
practically the whole island down there, I heard.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
It was
tough.
mm,
But we
I'm
pray
still
now
up.
for the living ones. We pray for or Kathy's husband, you know, that's what we need to do. Just live in prayer. And for everyone's safety, and, you know, we're running into a different era of the world, right? It's a world crisis, man. We're in a recession right now.
Be safe out there, guys. You're right, Vice Chair. And I'm actually still positive, but we're a lot better. The wife's a lot better.
I think I'm beginning to be positive. I don't know. I'm sorry, Vice Chair. I just got back on island. I wasn't there, but my prayers.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yes,
if I'm
no
beginning to
problem.
be positive.
Referring to my COVID, I'm feeling a lot better, but took the test. I'm still positive. And but thank you for your prayers, everybody, and be safe out there.
Yes.
I don't know, when I go out, I'm gonna be. Now I learned my lesson. Continue to be using the mask, especially inside, and social distance. So anyway, thank you very much. I guess that's gonna do it. It's for this special meeting. It's 3:46. Motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. This meeting is adjourned. Just want to say, guys, take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Safe. Thanks,
Thank you.
Dan. Joey.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.